Last week, we pushed it back because of the holiday. We went over a good bit of kind of what we discussed in the board meeting around Moxie and RHA update today. So you'll hear a little bit about that. We will send around a sign-up sheet. So if this is your first time here, or you've been here before, just find your name, initial it. If your name is not on there, go to the very last page and you can add your contact information. We'll get you loaded into our system. Make sure that you get updates on a going basis. That being said, any first-time visitors? If y'all don't mind, if you could stand up, tell us who you are, and let us welcome.
My name's Charlie Goodman. I'm the new owner of the Gable House.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Caladius, and I'm the new business manager for the Center of Innovation. So thanks so much for being here in this space this morning. Thank you.
I'm not completely new, but I'm relatively new. My name is Colton Black, and I am the new Economic Development Manager for the Southern Ute Tribe. So,
Hi, Marcia Porter Norton. I'm also not new, but visiting this morning because I have such a strong interest in housing. Thanks for all the work. And as you know, Commissioner Salk is your representative, but I really want to hear in real time what's happening with housing. So thanks.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Mills, Vice Chair of Cuyahoga Community Academy, which is the first tribal charter school institution in Toyota, Colorado, and the state of Colorado too. So it's state of Colorado. So it's nice to meet all of you.
Barbara Noseworthy, I'm not new, I'm returning. I was on the Alliance board 3 years ago, and I'm now the mayor of Durango. And I also wanted to give a bit of an update today. Thank you.
Way back.
Angela Cook. I am the Director of Employee Development with the local McDonald's franchise.
Good morning, Angela. Any other first-time visitors this morning? Okay, we've got lots. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. After the meeting, if you have any thoughts, recommendations, want to get involved, please find myself, Michael French, another board member. We'd be happy to introduce you around. I'd like to thank our coffee sponsor. First, this is the Community Foundation with First Southwest. Unfortunately, they weren't able to have someone here, but Ms. Madrigal is the new executive director for that fund. So we will hear from them in future meetings. They're super excited to have them part of the community and give us copies. That, we'll turn it over to Michael French. Sorry, thank you.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So briefly, I want to remind everybody that the airport will be shut down the 7th through the 16th. We'll continue to remind folks with this slide until we get to the month of September. I think it's going to have a significant impact. And I think it's important that people are aware of that. Speaking of September, we have the save the date out for the summit in 2022. It'll be Wednesday, September 21st. And we have 4 keynote speakers confirmed, including Sally Thornton, Carrie Siggins, Admiral Mike McCabe just confirmed. If you guys have been to movie theaters in the last 2 weeks, Admiral Mike McCabe was the commanding officer for Top Gun. He helped get the first movie made. He went on to command the Pacific Fleet and then ended up in the Pentagon as Director of Naval Air Warfare with jurisdiction over all the carriers and airplanes. So we're really fortunate to have him here. He'll talk about servant leadership. He'll talk about the common threads of high-performing teams. And again, we've got 3 other keynotes that I'm really excited about. One of the things that we've talked about as a committee is how are we going to top last year? Because last year was a really dynamic year. It was an awesome summit. And when I look at the lineup right now and starting to talk about breakout sessions, I think we're going to get pretty darn close, if not exceed it. So mark your calendars, Wednesday, September 21st, and we'll start going around with folks talking about participation, group participation, sponsorships. One of the things I wanted to mention is the Alliance Internship Program. I'll talk about this at more length next meeting, but we have 12 companies with requests in right now. We placed interns, still taking applications from our members. Just a reminder, the internship program is, we're subsidizing $3,000 per intern. That's $20 an hour for 150 hours through the FLC Career Services Program. So we also have some monies for mentorship. So if the subject matter expert is not within your organization, we'll go find them, and we have some hard dollars to pay for that. So make sure and look at your emails and contact Michelle if you're interested in participating in the internship program. I want to thank member renewals. James Corporation, thank you for bumping up to a Chairman Circle member. Really impressive. Investor Alpenglow, thank you, Dan. Vectra Bank, thank you, Jameson. Glacier Club, and Visit Durango for renewing their associate membership. This is for the month of May/June. We're going to have Austin Logan here from Keller Williams talk about housing data as a representative board of directors for Durango Area Association of Realtors. But before I do that, there's one stat that took me back that I was a little shocked at as I looked at the data. For the first time ever in Bayfield, the median sales price and the average sales price exceeded $500,000. And that has never happened before in the history of our community. So Logan will go into a little bit more detail of what's happening in housing and give some color to housing, but I thought I'd put a spotlight on this one because it's a little bit alarming. The affordability equation continues to be really hard when you look at Bayfield and you see this kind of price pressure. It really does state something. We did complete the housing investment plan study. For those of you that are very interested in the report, we have reports printed up here in front. Go ahead and grab one on your way out. Fortunately, Jen Lopez from Project Moxie is here to give a summary of that 3-year investment plan. We spent months talking to stakeholders in the community, months looking at best practices in neighboring communities, and I'm really proud of this report. I think Project Moxie and Consulting Consulting did a fabulous job getting to a deliverable. The question now is how do we put that into execution and what does the implementation plan look like? So Jen will talk a little bit about that. With that, I'll turn it back over to James. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We're really just going to turn over to Logan Austin. Where's Logan?
All right, thank you all. Appreciate the invite to the Durango Area Association of Realtors from the Economic Alliance. As Mike French mentioned, my name is Logan Austin. I currently sit on the board of the Durango Area Association of Realtors, and my current role is the Colorado Association of Realtors Director for our area. So I've been a member of the board for about 5 years now. I sit on Building Affairs and Building Audit Finance committees as well. Obviously, DAR is very involved with housing and the challenges we face here in our community. So we really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you a little bit about market dynamics. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the critical inflection point that we find ourselves right now in our community. You can see that with the numbers, not just what might hold up, but just the monthly indicators. Being in real estate, we're always looking a little bit in the rearview mirror. So the current stats I pulled are from Colorado Real Estate Network, known as Trend, which is the primary MLS operator for the West Slope. Some of the key takeaways for May itself, as far as the month of May, we were up a little bit in new listings for single family homes, down a little bit as far as townhouse condo properties. There's probably no news that townhouse condo is typically an affordable segment of our marketplace, and we see less and less of that inventory coming to market these days. And when we do, it's no longer that affordable segment that we traditionally see. Again, this is looking at our entire area. So Durango Area Association Realtors serves all of Plata County in addition to San Juan County. So there are some San Juan County numbers, except I'll be frank, it's 2. There were 2 sales in the month of May in Silverton, and there are currently 1 single family home listed in the town of Silverton right now. So if you think we've got a challenge, they've got a very big uphill battle. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. The city's obviously looking at the Anvil development that's currently in process, looking for some private-public partnership there, which would be great to see something happen. But as far as our total area, you can see median sales price is just continuing to rise, as well as across single family and townhomes. And some of the segments we're looking at nationally, even though we're seeing a little bit of slowdown in sales, really that's going to be attributed more to what's available to purchase. We don't have new inventory, or what we used to call standing inventory. We just have things on market for longer than 90 days, 120 days. We just don't have the capacity to keep up. One of the key takeaways I see here is, as the nation continues to explore ways to solve the ongoing housing shortage, estimated at 5.5 million homes nationwide. The Biden administration recently unveiled a housing supply actions plan, which aims to expand housing access through a number of administrative and legislative actions to help relieve the nation's housing crisis over the next 5 years. Locally, I'm sure you all are aware of like ARPA funds and things like that are finally going to get put into action. I'm excited personally about seeing some of those infrastructure improvements and expansions of the footprint so that we can get into a little bit more of a working relationship with those who are, putting themselves somewhat at financial risk when it comes to development in the market dynamics that we find ourselves. Interesting study I read the other day from the National Association of Home Builders was respondents said upwards of 40% of total project costs can be tied up in red tape for multifamily high density development right now. Because when you think about that, is insane. It's just crazy. So that trend, unfortunately, is not going to slow down, especially when it talks about labor shortages and supply chain issues and things just like raw materials. So jumping into just a little bit more of the numbers specifically, again, we can see that slight uptick as far as from a monthly basis for new listings coming to market in May. Again, though, our year to date, year over year, we're down 8.3% as far as new inventory coming to market. And of course, that's naturally going to correspond to pending sales, down 29.2 for the month of May. Keeping in mind, again, we're looking in the rearview mirror. So anything that's pending in May, or more importantly, closed in May, was actions that were taken back in April or March, right? Typical transaction timeline, 30 to 45 days. So things go under contract. We don't really see it hit our market stats until those close. May is typically a little bit of a ramp up part of our season, what we call the start of our selling season, even though we don't really experience much seasonality anymore in our Durango marketplace. And again, we're still pretty anemic when it comes to new listings coming. Looking at that median sales price, another key indicator, 31.6% up month over month in May and 22.7 overall for our entire area. Average sales price, you can see that very big gap between median and average. When we're looking at those numbers, what that's telling us is there's still a very large driver in the high-end luxury product that is being absorbed. Personally, I've seen a little bit of a slow in that marketplace because the reality is that's going to be driven by second home ownership or investors. And the moment the stock market gets a little wonky, especially when investors have realized massive gains that they have over the past couple of years with the expansion of the stock market, they're the first ones to kind of tighten the purse strings. So we'll see probably a little bit more days on market stuff. I've seen some certain inventory I thought was going to go under contract instantly. And brokers that are still marketing and doing open houses, things that basically you just didn't really have to put in much effort, honestly. So it'll be interesting to see where that trend line continues. Another important trend line, especially when we're talking about affordability in our community, is that percentage of list price received. We've essentially been hovering around 100% plus for about a year and a half now. That indicates we're seeing continuing scenario of multiple offer situations and purchases above asking price. And it's anywhere from that 1%, 1.4%. Sometimes it's 10, 15%. And when you're talking about an average median sales price of $675, that means somebody's coming in and spending almost $70,000 over asking for a home. That's still pretty commonplace right now. There's one that closed 2 days ago. I saw County Road 207, 1,500 square foot home, nothing super fancy, nice, went for $80,000 over asking price. Days on market, still pretty low, considering. And then when we're doing days on market, our analysis and stats don't show that contract timeline. There's other metrics within CRIM that can show us that. But again, that's the entirety of the listing. So that's including that transaction period of 30 to 45 days. That's a way to look at from when something actually goes on market, first goes under contract, and then eventually sells. We'll get into affordability index here in a little bit. I've got a couple slides that highlight some of this stuff. So month supply, another big key indicator, healthy market, around 5 to 6 months. We haven't gotten above 2.5 for a long time in our marketplace. And that's really actually just statewide, even nationally. Jumping into that townhouse condo market, again, you can see very common trend lines as far as what's happening from the new listing standpoint, pending sales. It's even a little bit worse in some of these segments as far as that townhouse condo market. As I mentioned before, what we used to consider attainable or affordable housing in Ottawa County, I'm not sure about you, but a $445,000 townhouse or condo doesn't really seem like an entry product anymore. So that's just a challenge that, unfortunately, right now we're not going to build our way out of. Interest rates have increased. So another segment to this is when we see these types of median pricing compared to where the rates have gone over the past 6 months, some buyers in our market have lost effectively $40,000 to $50,000 in purchasing power just in these last 6 months. So we'll see. Fed, of course, made their announcement. There will be a correlative effect as far as what the bond market does in comparison to that. And then we'll see what the mortgage rates do. So it'll be interesting to see how the next couple of months play out in regards to that. You can see days on market, that townhouse condo, even though it is a little bit pricey still, it's the more aggressive segment. We're 75 days on average versus that 90 for the single family. So that's just getting absorbed pretty much instantly. And then again, I mean, we're a little bit better, I guess, for months of supply from May over May, but not exactly warm and fuzzy there either. And this one, as I mentioned, is really kind of where the rubber meets the road. And I think really the core of the conversation we're having today, Project Moxie, Valley Group has done a really good job of trying to help our community devise a roadmap to address this problem right here. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's a scary chart. Just so you understand how these numbers work, like 100 is basically an even market. Consumer that makes the median income of their community can buy the median home. If it goes above 100, it has a little bit more of a buyer's market, a little bit more affordable. So you can see in our single family segment, we haven't been there now for well over 2 years. And it is now at 36 as far as our affordability index for our area. Personally, when I look at this, what I think about is I think about the other side of the housing coin. That's socioeconomic diversity, job opportunity, and growth within the community. Because this doesn't change even if you built 1,000 homes today. Right? It's really, you gotta have two conversations here. And that's why organizations like Economic Alliance leading the charge and saying, how are we gonna grow this community? Because I think we are again at that critical inflection point in our community. We can no longer just be this happy, warm, fuzzy tourist community, right? We all love what we love here. We are here for those reasons. At the same time, personally, I don't want to live in a community that doesn't have socioeconomic diversity and have the opportunity for other people to really set roots here and actually build a community. Because right now what we're creating transients. And transients may be those who can't afford homes, or maybe those that can afford a lot of homes and they just have dark doors instead. So where are we going to find that balance? Is really what I think about when I look at housing affordability index. And then just real quick, again, just a quick graph of that month supply of inventory. You can see we were somewhat at a stable market. Of course, May of 2020 was not the normal market. It was a healthy market though, and then it just went south real quick. So those trend lines will probably continue given the lack of inventory coming to market. And in the future, I think a lot of what I've seen as far as approval processes to the city is all great stuff as far as high density multifamily. My perspective is that's again just one side of a bigger coin. When we talk about housing, we don't always want to just talk about renters, right? Because the reality is in America, the biggest path to wealth building is home ownership. And the disparity of the average net worth of the homeowner versus a renter is astronomical. And again, if we want people to be in our community for the long haul, it's all about making them homeowners and having them seniors. Real quick, I'll just touch on at the CAR, at Colorado Association of Realtors, a lot of these conversations are similar statewide. From a legislative standpoint, CAR has been very active in trying to find avenues to help address these challenges. We were in heavy support of House Bill 1117, which was basically reallocation or the ability for municipalities and counties to reallocate the tourism tax dollars so that they can create funds if they so choose to address housing. I think that was a great move. One of the big conversations we had last fall that did not come to fruition was short-term rentals. And specifically Senator Hansen out of Denver, continuing to push for short-term rentals to be taxed as a commercial property. You can have your own opinions about short-term rentals. My personal opinion is if you're going to tax somebody that owns a $2 million condo at a commercial rate, they're just going to take it off the market because they have the liquidity and the ability to do that. They're not actually going to create housing stock. So it felt like that maneuver was more of a regulatory tax move as opposed to an actual income stream for communities. So CAR was not necessarily in support of that. We felt there was a little bit of tweaking that needed to be done to that. It did not come out of the committee. Tax task force that worked on it made some gains, but with Senator Hansen going probably into the mayoral race for the city of Denver, we may or may not see that come down the pipe again. Another one that we were very active with at the Colorado Association was the builder law that came across the legislative pipeline. And that was basically trying to create statewide green building rules. Of course, when you create more regulation, more standards, when building costs are already astronomical, it's already a challenge to get labor and materials. CAR felt adding on a lot of the overlays of green building was just going to be way too cost prohibitive and just hurt housing and the ability to develop even further. So they pushed against that, felt there was some tweaking that needs to be done. So that is my warm and fuzzy summary. Sorry to be that guy, but I do appreciate the opportunity because I think this is a very important conversation. I'm really excited to do my part, be a part of it, or invite again to stars to show the conversation with you guys and solve a very privileged for our community. Thank you.
Talking mostly with sellers. Talking about so much fires. Up next, we've got Jen Lopez, so she's gonna talk through our 3-year housing. Hopefully some solutions.
Good morning. What's that? All right, everybody take a big, deep breath.
Fix it all for us.
There's not enough coffee in this room for me to fix it this morning, but I'm really proud of this strategy. And I'm proud of this strategy because it's what you all told us, right? Good community consultants, strategic planners, we listen, we reflect, we help you refine, and we put it in paper, and then we hold you accountable. What I love about the work that I get to do is I get to do the strategy and I usually stay for implementation. Most consultants don't. That's where it gets really mucky, messy, and exciting. And so I'm hoping to be with you all for a couple more years, at least, to figure out how to move this forward. But I also want to say I've never done this before, so I'm on a huge learning curve. But a lot around housing is common sense. It really, really is. And our goal in the strategy was to make it accessible to anyone in this room. We didn't want you to have to be an expert. You all gave us some great feedback. You said, keep this thing short and sweet, give us charts and numbers and, don't make it overcomplicated. So I hope we did that. Who in this room was involved in a conversation, a meeting, or an interview as part of this process? Thank you so much. Thank you. We asked for a lot of time. A lot of you asked for more time from us, and we apologize if we weren't able to spend more time with you. But again, we wanted to get started. We had a lot of pressure to get to an implementation point, so that's where we're at. But what is an investment plan? So a lot of times a community does a housing needs assessment and they do a strategic plan. Housing strategic plans cover all kinds of things, policy, education. We wanted to focus on money because that's what we were told to do. And we think this is the moment to focus on money, right? And I'm going to talk about the money we have today, and then we're going to talk about the money that may be coming. And again, I've been doing this for 20 some years, never seen this, this is nothing like the Great Recession, right? What we're facing as a country around the lack of housing is unprecedented. And I think there's no turning back. And so Dem, Republican, Independent, I don't care what you are, I'm pretty sure you care about housing. And we know that the federal policy system is broken around housing. And so I think this is the beginning of this work, not like a blip. I really do. So, so what this plan did was it identifies key strategies, funding, we model. We wanted to figure out how to get to 715 opportunities in 3 years. Maybe that number seems low, but that's like triple what we've done. When I came in 2006, my goals were 20 a year. And everybody thought I was amazing. So, right, this is like a totally different scale. It attempts to identify who's doing what. It's all about coordination. It has to be, and we'll talk more about that. And then we're really focusing on what best leverages public-private. People that work with me know that I love the private sector. But folks, we cannot do this without the private sector. The public sector has to leverage and do what they do best, which is fund and get out of the way. Being really blunt here. The private sector has to be given vision and some rules and some money, right? And that's how we partner on these things. One of the big cornerstones of the plan is, and the governments are all doing this, we're saying take this to scale. And so what we're saying here is every government should consider setting goals around how many units that are being built in your community can be bought down. So buy downs are the fastest way to create bull market housing, right? So if Joe's building $600,000 homes, and I'm not saying these buy downs are cheap, we might be putting $200,000 per home to buy them down, but that's the fastest way to create the solution today. We have 1,600 units in the pipeline. Kim Baxter's not here today, is she?
No.
Kim has taught me pipeline, and I'm going to do this too, pipeline. Pipeline means there's a whole lot of interest and folks are in process of development. We cannot count on those numbers. Logan, you made me want to cry, but I'm going to give you a hug and I have an ask later, wherever you are.
Right.
Oh, right there. Sorry. That was a beautiful presentation, by the way. It was beautiful. But I think there's some ways we can work together because you're right? What happens is we put in the pipeline, like red tape happens. Interest rates go up. Let's talk about supply chain. Where are our contractors? I'm working on about 80 million in deals right now in 2 different states, and they die every other week. This is a really crappy time to be a developer. So we do have to think very differently and be a lot more flexible and a lot more helpful. But here's the great news, right? So 1,600 pipeline, that's countywide, 428 million in state ARPA funds, right? 90 million in state funds this year, right? We're used to, I don't know, 30 million, and that was a good year, right? So I can't explain the scale here of what's happening. We put in the document, it's skinny and it's got pretty pictures, but there's a ton of hyperlinks at the back of the plan where if you're curious what I'm talking about, you can click and you can learn more about these buy downs. But again, super simple. Something's coming on market, you buy it down. It's gonna take a ton of capacity, like a ton. And so I'm here to help, but it's gonna take like 10 more, right, to get this done. But I'm optimistic as always. Other key strategies besides buy downs in the local communities, increased rental housing, we've already got a pipeline, we can continue, but you have to be intentional about this pipeline. If you sit back and hope that it happens, it won't, or you won't get what you want. And I'm gonna talk about one of the most critical components here in a minute of communities controlling what kind of projects get built. But increase for sale, I didn't have to worry about this 15 years ago. Lisa's in here, I love the Homes Fund so much, you're doing great work, Lisa, always, but we could just go put mortgages on stuff all day long. It was fun. We can't do that anymore, right? Lisa has nothing to put a mortgage on. So this is really hurting our brains when we think about doing this, but we have some interesting ideas. And you told us and we said, yeah, that's a great idea. So we'll talk about that. One of the biggest ones is there's conversations around Three Springs, La Posta, other properties in the city county area. And we have provided some strategy and some guidance on how to make a decision and go after one of them and go big and go all the way. City and county partnership and public leverage and commitment to something is the only way we're going to get to scale. It's going to take years. And so we want to pilot that this year and figure out how to do that so we can get this going. I didn't, Marcia, you had questions in the report. They were so great. I'm going to touch on them now instead of a call. So Marcia had asked, well, why aren't we talking about this regional development initiative with Bayfield Ignacio? Bayfield Ignacio are different scale and they're doing great. They just need some technical assistance. So that's why we really focused on Durango and La Plata. Oh my gosh, what an incredible place to live. So yes, we have issues, but we are really a community, right, Logan? I mean, everything that happened this spring with West Side and Triangle, really powerful. I work all over the state. It was rare what happened here. And so I want to do a call out that residents organized, that county responded, that nonprofits responded, that the local First Fund and employers responded. I mean, this was a model. So I'm just so proud of this community for doing what you did. Keep doing it. So we built on some other ideas around getting in front of preserving mobile home parks. There's 71 in La Plata County, folks. It's going to happen again, okay? And then, we have a ton of money now. And it's sort of loosey-goosey money, but we're gonna need money for the long haul. We just are. We've been talking about a dedicated funding source for housing since 2004. If not now, let's just go home. So one of the big recommendations and one of the ways you could get involved, what you can get involved is get involved in one of the implementation committees following up, right? So I think RHA is gonna take on this public funding conversation, get involved there. We're gonna talk about some stuff that Mike's gonna do, other ways to get involved. We're always going to have to do education and advocacy, but Logan, you're hired. I think I'm retiring. You're in front. We just got to give you a little more positive spin. And then we got to, activate employers. I mean, really, there's several employers. You all been talking to me for years. We got some ideas now. We'll take your $1 million. We'll invest it, and I'll show you how we're going to do it. But thank you. And then the last thing, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, and you all should give me a timer. Are we doing okay on time? Does this feel right, Mike? Okay. I love that you were like, you got 10 minutes, like, so, best way to control how funds flow to your community and what gets built is in pre-development, right? So I'm a huge advocate on pre-development funding, and for many, many years, nobody funded it. We have an opportunity to fund it now, and let's do it. So there's lots of recommendations around that. So, and it also creates an opportunity for public process. So there's funds, developers, nonprofit, for-profit, employers could come to this fund and say, here's my idea. I want a feasibility for X, Y, and Z. It's a transparent process. We'll make it not a lot of red tape. We'll also provide a think tank with a committee to help think through how to move some stuff forward. But I think this is going to leverage and move the community faster than any of these other, they're all great, but that one's going to be very powerful. Some takeaways from the process. The need is significant and so is the gap. Again, never seen these numbers before. I didn't even attempt to try to say how many units we need because at some point it's like doesn't even make any sense anymore to talk about need. I want to focus on what we can do. So we focused a lot on what we can do. But you'll see in the document, we did a lot of math. And the gaps are anywhere from 45,000 to 200,000 units. Again, those are huge numbers. But imagine every gap maybe is filled partially by state funds at least, if not equity. So we'll find ways to close that gap. The production is critical. We know this. That 1,600 pipeline, at least half of it needs to move forward. And Logan, it can't all be rental, right? We just can't be. We're saturating a certain part of the market. It's going to bite us all. There were some innovations in the plan. Sorry. We listened to stakeholders. Again, we reflected what you told us, and we wanted to point out where you had some synergy as a community. So that was really fun. Again, we also wanted to, again, the big point is how does local government and private entities scale land development together? So that's one of the big ideas moving forward. And then the funding the pre-development. Again, we talked about the local park. I want to do a call out for Fort Lewis. We worked with them last year. We're trying to implement their strategy. We're implementing their strategy this year. But it's letting us test some of our theories in this document. So it's very likely that we'll learn some stuff from the Fort Lewis model and come back and go, well, let's tweak this here. But big shout out for the leadership. And then everyone talked about how do we get production costs down? And boy, if I had that answer, I'd be retired, right? Like I'd be pretty well off. But there's a lot of happening here. I know different groups are researching this. This has to come to some decision in the next step. We have to figure out how we're going to do this here. And so that could be modular, it can be panelization, it can be different unit types, it can be this and that. So that has not been fully solved, but we're calling out that everybody's ready, and I think there's a commitment to figure out how to do that. There's a lot of things we said not to do. We wanted this to be focused and elegant. We didn't want 23 strategies that would overwhelm everybody involved. So there's, I don't know, 7 or 8 about a dozen strategies, but we hyper focusing here. However, anybody hear about Proposition 108? Does we know what that is? So I was on a call with Mike Johnston yesterday. He is working with a team to release Proposition 108 next fall, and it's $300 million for housing annually for a very, very long time. The reason I bring that up is that the state, the feds, everybody knows our regulatory system, it's got to be fixed. Like if we, and so all the funders, just FYI, this is coming, all the funders are going to require fast tracking to get money in the next 2 years. So I'm just being really blunt. If you are concerned as a local government, whether you're doing this or not, hire Clarion or someone to do a quick review because you will not be getting funding in the community. It's going to hit you one way or the other. Prop 108, I think they ask you for, you have to commit to a 90-day approval process or something wonderful. So that's super exciting. So some of these things may pop up because of the state funds that are coming next. How will all this be implemented? Well, I'm going to go on vacation and then no. Actually, what we think is, or what we've recommended in the plan is that there's more formal collaboration between Economic Alliance and RHA, because those two entities kind of encompass most of us, right? And encompass private sector and public sector. We're recommending quarterly meetings where we can go through and work on the plan and talk about who's doing what. There's also some committees that we're gonna hopefully launch under Mike's leadership, and again, RHA. So these two entities I see as being really pivotal. Doesn't mean we're gonna do it alone, but just as coordinating entities. There's also a coalition that's been forming, and I actually talked to her yesterday, Olivia. Fascinating, a national grassroots organizing group is working in Lafayette County around housing. We need that, right? We need to give our local electeds cover to do some really wild stuff. And so I'm excited to see that happen because without that political support and cover, this stuff will die in a couple of years when we have a new election, just being really honest. Okay. So what's next? We're going to put together the Housing Catalyst Fund, which is the pre-development fund we discuss in the book and have some, guidelines on. Again, what's going to make that powerful is that it'll be money in early, and this committee, I think, will be a powerhouse to help us be thought partners about how to do these projects. DOH will be in town, Division of Housing, on August 2nd, I believe. We'll get the word out, but fill that room because they're used to hearing from a dozen nonprofits, and I love my nonprofits, but they need to hear from you all, right? Because what happens is funds go from the legislature to these state agencies, and then we forget to lobby for how it actually gets administered, and it's amazing how much flexibility you'll find at the administrative level. So we want to make sure we're involved in that process, and then we really want to push in this regional project that's going to be of scale. So we still need to figure out if that's going to run through RHA, Economic Alliance, or the pre-development fund. But I suspect all of these things will be starting in the next, I told Mike I could start next week, so soon. That was fast. We're slow. We're a lot. Questions?
So briefly, the report is on our website. It's yeslpc.com, and then feel free to grab a report. We'll print out more reports. We want this in the hands of everybody, so that there's no shortage of us being able to crank these out. So if you need anything from us, either a hard copy, soft copy, please forward that copy. There's no proprietary information here. It's a community asset. Right? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jim. Anybody in here is wondering, why is the economic alliance so involved with housing? That's all we talked about this morning. So of our 3 strategic initiatives, with business capacity and growth, housing solutions, and expanding recruit workforce, really the housing solutions component, if there's the 3-legged stool, it's kind of become one of the legs and the seat. So we can't really recruit without having places for people to live. So it's become intricate. The alliances in these meetings, that's the drive, is we've got to find some local strategies to try and help curb the pressure on it. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context for a whole lot of housing conversation. Next, we'll go, Scott Owens couldn't make it. So we're going to go to Richard Bustamante with the U.S. Forest Service. He's going to give us a little bit of an update on fires.
Richard, space bar.
Okay.
Slides here saying, all right, so I'm going to go into the fire update last. But anyways, my name is Richard Bustamante. I'm the fire staff officer for the San Juan National Forest Board. Official title, I'm the chief. I oversee the whole fire program for wildland program for the San Juan National Forest. That includes all the districts out in Dolores, Columbine, and Mendoza, as well as the National Resources Dispatch Center that we host out of the supervisor's office here in Durango. National Resources being our hotshot crew and our helicat crew out at the airport, along with our air tanker base. You guys probably seen Preparedness Peak, probably a pretty good show of what we do, especially on the aviation side of things. So I'm guessing I was invited because you don't want to see your inventory burned down. Right? So, sounds like this is the housing meeting for the most part. So we'll get back into our preparedness. That's my job. It really is to make sure that we're prepared for the conditions that we have. Prevention and force suppression. So those are the main focuses of my job. With San Juan, of course, we have a lot of different avenues within fire management that we look at as far as landscape and resiliency and those kind of things, force count, different things that we go into. But anyways, as you may be aware, we are already in stage 1 fire restrictions. We are through the end of shift today. We'll remain in stage 1 fire restrictions, which means no campfires other than in developed Forest Service campgrounds. Most of our partners, whether it's Plata County, San Juan County, Archuleta, all the counties and fire departments and other federal agencies like Mesa Verde and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Land Management, we're all very coordinated. We have working all the time. We're talking all the time because we can't do this job without each other's help, right? So everybody kind of has their strengths and weaknesses and equipment types and different things. So what we do is we coordinate all that with meetings, of course, all the chiefs. We get together and we try to plan out what everybody has, how we can support each other. And so every response that you see in this Durango zone, all the way from the Utah border down to the New Mexico border, all the way to Wolf Creek and north up to Silverton, is an interagency response. It doesn't matter whose land it is. We respond to those fires. So you're just going to see a bunch of different agencies as we work through those things. So with that, we are planning on going into stage 2 starting tomorrow. And that coordinated effort is again, with all of our partner agencies and collaborators. So usually everyone follows our lead as the Forest Service because we're the ones that are tracking the data indices. We have the field moistures, we have a lot of the science based on it. So then we have, as far as all the partners and everything, we have criteria that we go by. And once we hit those criteria, then we recommend as fire managers, those restriction levels to the approving officials. So I can't, even though I have a big title, I can't make that official decision that we're going into a certain restriction. I have to coordinate with our forest supervisor. He has the signature on those orders. Same with, like, say, La Plata County. The fire chiefs and even the emergency manager for La Plata County can't do it. It's got to go to the sheriff and to the county commissioners for those approvals. So every agency is a little bit different, but we're pretty much there. So really what stage 2 overall, if you think about it, stage 2 is just no open flame. That's really what it comes down to, even in developed campgrounds. You're going to see some things on here. Yeah, smoking. We don't want smoking other than inside an enclosed vehicle or a building. You know, have blasting or welding, explosives, fireworks are always a no. Restrictions are not. Operating equipment. Those are things that actually from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. that is actually we're just we're not even doing that this go around. So you'll see that in the restriction order when it comes out with the press release that that language is actually not in there. Driving off of roads, you know, there's always the threat of mufflers and tall grass and dryness that's starting fires sometimes. So, but really overall, it's no complaints. Things that are legal, we still, you know, people are going to be out camping. They're still going to be like wilderness. We want people to recreate as much as possible. However, it is going to be limited. So it's got to be propane, white gas with the shutoff valves. One of the things that's pretty confusing on at least for the federal agencies is those propane fire pits. They look like campfires. People can enjoy them. We actually tried to go through our Office of General Counsel, basically their lawyers, to draft language that would ban those even in stage 2. But there's no way that we're told, and this is for all federal agencies. BLM did the same thing. BIA, we cannot enforce that as federal agencies. So as long as they're propane and they have the shutoff valve, those are completely legal. One of the things that with those, we get a lot of reports of campfires and nights responding, and it's a lot of those. We get a lot of that in Silverton. There, the sheriff isn't too happy with that. You know, he works really well with us, but at the same time, they respond to a lot of fires because it's very visible up there. Once the nightfall comes and people light those up, and they just get inundated with calls. So we try to help out as much as we can with those things. But it is one of those people, because really those propane is not really, they're not throwing sparks. They're not, as long as they're not, you know, with overhanging branches and brush and stuff like that, they're, you know, those really are safe. So that's why we have them. Are there any questions on that so far, as the stage 2 fire restrictions? I think I'll read through a lot of this stuff. But anyways, you know, like I said, we're tracking our fuel moistures, our indices, our everything that we know. Historically, right now, we're probably matching up very closely with 2018. There's it says, oh, monsoon is on the way. There is, our indices are telling us that it's going to fall off pretty quickly, and it's coinciding with the forecast that we're going to get some sort of moisture event this weekend. One thing I do want to emphasize is that we're still just going to stage 2. Where we're at with our heavy fuels and long-term drought that we're in our area is it's going to take not just a good monsoon, not just probably another, it would take a great winter moisture event to start bringing those levels down of our long-term drought. So even if we get a moisture event that lasts 2 or 3 days this weekend, it's going to take about 2 or 3 days and we're going to be right back to where we're at today. It's going to take prolonged moisture over a long period of time to recover from that. But if the monsoon sets in and, you know, like it normally does around the 4th of July, traditionally, then, you know, we'll be looking to come out of those restrictions once we get a little longer prolonged moisture event, even though we would still be in a drought, long-term drought, I guess I should say, for that recovery. So hope for the monsoons, hope for, things. I don't want another fire season. Seems like a lot of our fire seasons anymore are going into November. We're working all the way into November, even this year's December. We are trying to get resources to go up to those older, have large fires up there, between Christmas and New Year's. So we're to spend some family time, but that's just the way it is anymore. It's a year-long fire season. So with that, I'll transition into more, oops, I'm sorry. We'll just leave that up. And where we're at for a fire season. Just to give you an example, I talked about fire seasons even locally going into November and then having to support other areas of the United States. Because that's what we do. If there's not a fire season here, our firefighting resources are going elsewhere. Just like right now, we have out of area resources supplementing our local fire initial attack crews. So they come from all over. We have them both from the Northwest, we have them from the Southeast, we have them from all over the place of the United States coming here to staging to help us if we get those initial attacks going on. The way that we plan it, I talk about our indices plans and stuff. We have a staffing plan that basically mirrors. So when those indices come up and our planning levels, say we're at planning level 4 right now, we have 5 planning levels with the 5 being the highest, 4 being pretty darn high. We live in 3 for the most part for a normal fire season, which would be planning level 3, which would still, we would need to supplement our initial attack, our local initial attack resources, but not as heavily as we're staffed right now. It just as an example, we rarely see our national resources. I talked about that, our hotshot crew, our Durango Helicat crew. Those folks are road warriors. They are on the road. It's their national resource. We do not have control over their availability. Once they're tagged national resource, they're going to the large fires, wherever those may be. But right now, with the danger, the fire danger that we have right now, we have both our hotshot crew and our Helicat crew here available to us a stage. Not only that, we have Wyoming hotshots down here. We have another crew that's arriving today from Oregon, I believe. We have lots of engines support from all over the place. We have dozers. We have what we call basically a small dozer with a water tank on the back. A skidgen is what we call it. It's basically a transformed skidder, logging skidder into a firefighting piece of equipment. There, our aircraft. We have 2 large helicopters that we have Mesa Verdes, their Helicat crew here in the zone. And we have a large air tankers, plus we have the little, you know, those prop dusting airplanes, we call them seaplanes, single engine air tankers. We have a couple of those parked down at the airport also. So we're staffed really well for an initial attack. Now, does that mean that we're going to catch every fire in the initial attack phase? So far, we've been successful this season, right? And being able to do that without any structures lost that are too much damage and whatnot. But then you have a fire like the 416, say, okay? What I want to emphasize on that is those are the kind of fires that it doesn't matter how much stuff you have, you're not going to catch. And we have potential for those kind of fires right now in our area. The thing is that if we get one of those fires, at least we have the resources, just like on 416, where we prioritize, okay, we're not going to concentrate on the fire as it's moving out into where there's not any infrastructure threat. We're going to concentrate what we have to make sure that we don't lose homes to the best of our ability. And that's what we did. So we could have another scenario like that where we have a fire in a bad spot, like the Parents Peak fire. That was a bad spot. That was a good catch because there's going to be the wind shift on that. We'd be threatening neighborhoods. We'd be evacuating and our priorities wouldn't be necessarily direct attack, it would be more of a defensive mode, backing off and doing the structure protection and making sure that people are getting out and those kind of things. So it just depends on, we have to prioritize this firefighting resources on what the job may be. So we have that. On the kind of a special ops kind of resource that I just debriefed yesterday is what we call a prevention team. Another part of my job is prevention and trying to prevent any human storms, right? So we have a prevention team. They have 6 members here in town. They're gonna be split across the districts. They're gonna be out attending events, doing smoky prevention, whatever that they can get with. They're gonna be doing anything that where the public rises, passing out products, making sure they know what restriction levels we're in, what those restrictions read, those kind of things. So they're going to be out and about. They're starting the day mobilizing and getting out and coming out. So there's a lot of moving parts that we go through right now to try to prevent as many fires as possible. So that's really all I have.
So much, Richard. Great job on the Parents Beat Fire. Obviously, that was very.
And I will do the speed round here. Do I just push that? There you go. Okay, first of all, as we just was mentioned earlier, with the Economic Alliance, our job here is to try and recruit new business, grow new business. And of course, the school district has a ton to do with that. How do you bring people in to a region? And as the largest school district in Southwest Colorado, and the largest employer, we feel we have a direct connection to doing that. So we just finished our portrait of a graduate and explained what this is. Many of you were involved in this as industry and community leaders, community members. We gathered input and had meetings with over 7,000 people, 35 meetings, to really get input from everyone, including our students. What are those skills and dispositions our students need for the future? No matter what the content is, no matter what the jobs are, what are those skills? So this is what we want and need our students to do and be like, and be able to, the skills that they need when they go into the future. This is our North Star, and we'll be putting all of our initiatives, all of our programs to make sure all of our students kindergarten through 12th grade have these skills. So thank you. You'll see there's a big rock there though, because that means that we need to build strong content mastery. One of the ways that we are making sure our students have all those really cool skills that we need for any job in the future is our Impact Center. So our Career Innovation Center, not to be confused with the Great Career Innovation Center here, is being called Impact. And we currently have 13 career pathways at DHS and Big Picture High School. Also, our career pathways were growing. We have a new audio video production. We have a new educator pathway where we are teaching our own students through collaboration with Fort Lewis College so that students will be in that educator pipeline, especially underrepresented groups. And so we're very thankful for that. Also, we're digging down, reaching down into middle school. So you'll notice our 2 middle schools will have audio video production, engineering, robotics programs starting next year that will feed into this. But these are some of the areas that we're working on, and we're going to need your help because we want to build authentic projects with our students, internships, work-based learning experiences. This building is planning to be open December of 2023, so not much longer. We're also expanding our wood shop, metal and welding departments. We know that the trades are really important, especially some of you who are builders and developers out there. This space, this just shows part of it. Will be a space that will be used by our high school students, but also middle school, elementary, robotics competitions here. We'll have pitch competitions, shark tanks. We really want to build around the design thinking principles. So there will be spaces all through here for kids to prototype, to define, to test, reflect, ideate, and advise. In addition, we are working hard this summer. When I talked about that big rock, we need strong content mastery. Our end of year scores are up. Our kids are filling in those gaps. We're very fortunate with partners such as Durango Education Foundation. We have lots of different community partners who are working with us on checkpoints for our kids. We also are adding a lot of new programs, just, again, to really go from good to great, to make sure that Durango's on the map as one of the best districts in Colorado and in the country to bring people here. So we have new curriculum, we do new programs, we have 36 robotics teams. Now we're working on project-based learning. So all of those 6 competencies are project-based learning. So here's the bad news. That's great that we're recruiting people here and we're getting families. Our enrollment is down. Young families can't afford to live here. We are losing 100 students next year. If you think about it, that's almost $1 million. It's a crisis for us because it's a crisis for our community. Our teachers are priced out. One of the housing, I'm not sure that everyone realizes the cost of housing that a teacher can afford. Newer teachers, in the first 5 years or so, they take home about $2,400 a month. They have to pay 11% of their salary into retirement. They also pay a proportion into insurance. So what is 40% of $2,400? $960. So our teachers have to find housing for $960 a month if they're single. And of course, that's really not sustainable in Durango. So what's happening are things that you would never think happen, right? Like 2 married couples share a house with 2 other people, they have little kids. Who would have thought that's our situation at 35 to 40 years old? Or maybe they have to live 45 minutes away. Or maybe they would like to come to Durango and they accept jobs such as all the math teachers that we've been trying to hire. And then they look and they say, I can't come. So now we're in June, no math teachers for our jobs. It is a crisis. Some of the things we're looking at, I know we're working with all these partnerships. They're probably not coming fast enough for our shortage. And we're looking at things such as working with Habitat for Humanity. I never would have thought that we would need teachers to work with Habitat for Humanity, but that's where we are. Also looking at ways that we can build prefab houses on some of the land that we have. If any developers out here, anyone can connect us with someone, we'd love to do that. Even looking at innovative models such as share homes. So teachers in the home for 9 months, seasonal workers in the home for 3 months. We give teachers a van life for the summer. Put some stuff in storage, only have to pay for 9 months of rent. So lots of those kinds of things we're open to anything. I think you all know about the funding shortfall, so I won't say any more about that. But anyway, we're trying to make your school district great, but please help us to find ways to bring teachers here. Thanks.
Good morning. We've got Al Harper for an update on the Durango Silverton Revolution. Morning, Al.
Hi, everybody. Hey, asking me to be brief is an amazing task. I was really thinking, Michael, a lot of things we'd like to share, or maybe another time we could come back when there's more time. I do just want to tell you that the railroad was working closely with the Forest Service. It's been a good friendship with the local Forest Service people. The railroad is shut down, probably will be shut down for another 3 days. We work on a different fire precaution program than the community does as a result of the settlement of the lawsuit from the 416 fire. It's called the Industrial Fire Precaution Levels, and we're in a level 4, which means we're not allowed to run in the forest whatsoever. It's disappointing because we've spent $14 million in the last 2 years trying to be prepared for this, and I believe that we'll make a lot of progress. So many other things I wanted to share with you all, but I think it's just better. You've been flooded with information. Maybe there's another time we can come and talk about the railroad. I want to talk about a project we did that was so helpful with the Alliance and doing a economic impact study on the railroad. I think all of you would find it interesting. So maybe we can get together again in another week or two.
So.
Thanks so much, Al. Sorry we're running so short on time.
We'll go to municipal updates. There goes working.
Hello, I'm Barbara Nosworthy. Mike had asked me, can you talk a little bit about your priorities for the year as mayor? And I too am going to say, can I have an invite back at another time? But I did want to say that when I was a candidate, I ran, that was 3 years ago, I ran on 5 issues. They were fiscal stability, we had issues with our budget, we had issues with being able to pay for roads. Housing, we had issues, as we were talking about it long before then, but housing issues, particularly workforce housing, that was one of the things I wanted to focus on as a candidate and as a counselor. Good paying jobs, diversifying our economy, and being a resilient, sustainable community. And Logan, I appreciate you saying it about having a diversity of economic, because, you know, and when Karen talks about we don't have people having children, how that all affects us. So as a former retired person, I also want to make sure it's not a community just as retired folks. So I want to see a multi-generational, and then addressing issues also on that resilient fire and water issues as well, and homeless. And I can tell you that as the mayor, those are still going to be my priorities. They were my priorities as a candidate. I've seen progress on that, and they will continue to be what I will focus on in my role as mayor this coming year. I did want to say a few things about the city. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Jose Madrigal. Jose was out of town last week presenting at the Government Financial Officers Association on regaining trust in government, particularly after we dealt with embezzlement. So I think I'd like to say that we've seen a real change in the relationship with builders, with developers, a real sense of community service and client service. But I'd also like to get your feedback on that if you think that there are other things we can be doing. A couple of things just on what the city's doing. We're using our American Rescue Plan Act. We put $650,000 to support the La Posta area infrastructure design. $150,000 is going to be used to design mainline water and sewer facilities. $500,000 will be used for road travel and intersection designs for the River Road and the La Posta Road from the highway intersection to the southern end of La Posta. So that's significant resource for us, and we'll be doing a traffic analysis to look at accommodating future build out in that area. So we've already sort of put that million to play. I don't know if you're going to talk about, are you having still, Mike, the landowners meeting tonight?
Yes.
As well, so we'll be having that to look at that as well. And then also on a significant area, we have on housing, we've hired, I think you all know Eva Hansen, and we put in $600,000 to support the public-private partnerships through our URA. And I've always been one to say, this is not subsidizing housing. We are incentivizing development. We have to work with developers to help them be able to take the risk to develop attainable housing. And so that's a really different mindset in my mind. And I actually remember, Jack, you asked me as a candidate, Barbara, what do you think about the city helping with water and sewer? And I said, we have to partner. We have to find ways to bring housing to the table. So what we will be doing with that $600,000 that we're working with in a public-private partnership in the North Main Gateway, where it's not the same number that Jen was talking about, but we'll be bringing 4 units with a reduced price, appreciation cap, and it'll be local worker occupancy. And then we also have 6 other units that have different components, but it's tied to people who are working here, being able to have housing. So I really want to give a shout out to Scott Shine, working on that with the URA. And then the last thing I think that I want you to be aware of is we did adopt our sustainability plan. We're focusing on greenhouse gas reductions, resiliency to climate change, health and well-being, and equitable implementation of actions. And I wanted just to address 2 things on fire, if I may, and then on homelessness. On fire, Marcia and I and Melissa Youssef worked, so the city and county worked together to really work with fire mitigation throughout the county. And the city put in money to do work in the county because we recognize that wherever the fire starts, it's going to impact all of us. So we have to do mitigation throughout the county. not just within our own environment. And then also on the issue of homelessness, I was chatting with Matt Salka just last night, and I think we have to take the same strategy that we took as a city and the county partnering on fire. We're gonna have to sit down, look at this every week and try to find a solution, because in my own view, that issue's been kicked down the road, the can's been kicked down the road forever, and we need to address this, not only as a housing issue, but as a safety, as a resilient issue for our community. I'd be happy to stay later and take questions from anyone. Thank you.
Those were the. Okay.
Hey, everybody, thanks for sticking around. First of all, I'd like to invite you to our block party this Thursday from 5:30 to 8:30. We'll have a beer garden, live music, vendors, our restaurants will be full go down on Mill Street. As our land use items continue to ramp up in Bayfield, we're really taking a hard look at our land use code. And we're going to be working on updating items like oil and gas regulations, or especially our setbacks, sign codes, food truck regulations, vacation rentals, subdivision improvement agreements. These are all just kind of things that haven't been thrown our way quite yet in Bayfield, but they're coming. And as budget season approaches, we are still very focused as a board. Our top priority is still affordable housing and our park conceptual plan. We're going to start ramping up some of the components in that plan. We kind of feel like that is the gateway to our economic development community. Once we get our parks thriving, then we will start luring businesses and continue to allow those businesses to thrive in our downtown corridor. But that's all I have, short and sweet.
Mayor Clark Craig from Ignacio.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're on the home stretch. So just real quick, I just want to know how many people have neighbors? Oops. Yeah, neighbors. So last night, the town of Ignacio approved a proclamation creating the Connections Month, creating Connections Month. And it's very important. While we talk about all these housing and these financial issues, people is one of our biggest assets, and loneliness is a really huge issue. And so just urge every one of you to reach out to your neighbors. If you haven't talked to them in a while, just make sure they're doing okay. And as the community leaders, we can do that. You might have heard we had a little fire in our backyard a week and a half ago. Took out power between Bayfield and Ignacio because the main power feed was going right through that. That was a BIA agency that was in charge of that fire. They had well over 100 individuals working on it. It was amazing to watch the aerial assault that we just heard about earlier. So a big shout out about them. The origin of the fire is still under investigation, but if you look at the name of the fire, I think you'll find a pretty good clue of where it started. Okay, real quick, Trevor Berg from Durango Harley came out to our chamber meeting. I'm gonna put a chamber hat on real quick because they're wanting to bring back the motorcycle rally come September. Big shout out to him. He wants an event that he can take his kids to. If he can't take his kids to it, they're not going to do it. So I think that's something as a community we can get behind that brings in hundreds and hundreds of, maybe thousands of people. So just want to say that. Thanks.
So much, Mayor Craig. And Commissioner Salk, bring us home.
I'll be quick, everyone. Good morning. A couple of items here is for ARPA. We have an RFP out for a social impacts provider to be able to help assist with putting $3.5 million towards any initiatives in the social impact sector. Property acquisition, I do have to bring some potential sad news, and that is today we'll be considering terminating the contract on the property on 160. It's just not looking good. The other item too is we have an RFP out for our national weather radar system at the airport. So looking forward to that actually happening and finally getting built. Fire restrictions, thank you very much for that update. So that will be happening tomorrow. Chapter 90 oil and gas code. We're going to go through our public process in September. So please stay tuned and we encourage any public input on those items. And then tonight we have an on the road tour at the Vallecito Chamber building from 6 to 7:30. And this winter we'll be reviewing short-term rentals and going through that process. So public input will be encouraged as well for that item. We've been hearing from a lot of constituents out in the area of concerns with short-term rentals, so we'll be reviewing all that. And then Logan briefly spoke about lodgers tax. And I think that that is a great tool that could be used here in La Plata County. When I first started as commissioner last year, we received in county lodger's tax $500,000. We're now almost to $1 million a year. So right now we're following closely to be able to see how COVID trends have changed. Tourism did increase in La Plata County compared to a lot of the rest of the state. So will this change? So we're keeping our eyes closely, but this is an initiative I think that could potentially happen in the future. Be able to allocate 90% at minimum or at max to housing, childcare. But look forward to working with Visit Durango or any other entity to be able to start that process in the future. But I think that's a huge amount, that's a good amount of funds to be able to help with RHA or any other housing initiatives out there in La Plata County. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Saul. Really appreciate y'all hanging out. I know we ran late today. We kind of planned on running a few minutes late, but we went later than that. Question?
I just wanted to say, my name is Bert Carter. I'm looking for an opportunity. So if any of you are looking for someone to join your organization doing something on these kinds of actions, please let me know.
Appreciate it. Next meeting is scheduled for July 12th. Al, we'll get you back. Thank you so much again. If you guys have any questions, input, we appreciate you. Talk to a board member. Thanks so much.